Hi everybody, a very warm welcome to thorough newspaper analysis for the 4th and 5th of April 2024. This is a combined video for both of these days. Now let's quickly proceed further and have a look at the agenda for today. So first of all, for the editorial segment, we have another Indian Express article with the title, Why Tamil Nadu is Claiming Disaster Relief Funds from the Centre. So this is again, another article in the series of articles that we've seen so far, where there appears to be a conflict between the government at the center and the various, governments, state governments, with respect to a lot of pointers. Now, today's article highlights one such issue, which is the alleged inaction on part of the center in not releasing funds which are required by two states, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, for mitigating the effects of natural calamity, or to say, for disaster management. So essentially, two governments are seeking release of funds from the National Repository for disaster relief to their state funds. Now, in this article, we'll have an understanding of, how dynamics play at the center and the state for disaster management. What are the sources of the funds? How are funds allocated? And why both of these governments are aggrieved and therefore before the Supreme Court, what are their demands? Secondly, we talk about the news updates, and this is going to be followed by the last segment where we have a look at the legal news. So without further ado, let's start with the article, the title of which is Why Tamil Nadu is Claiming Disaster Relief Funds from the Centre. So let's quickly have a look at the context, as in, what is transpired in the very recent with respect to this entire matter. So the state of Tamil Nadu, it filed a suit at the Supreme Court with the claim that the center is withholding national disaster relief funds after Cyclone Mishong and the consequent floods that rocked the state in December 2023. Just last month, the Karnataka government had also filed a plea before the Apex Court with the claim that the center is denying disaster relief funds that are necessary to aid drought-affected areas in the state. So what we can gather from this context is two storylines. First is that Tamil Nadu government or the state of Tamil Nadu, it is before the Supreme Court, claiming that the Supreme Court may kindly, give directions to the center to release funds from the national fund to the state fund to mitigate the effects of a cyclone that the state saw, which is called Cyclone Mishong, and the floods that followed in December of 2023. Secondly, we talk about Karnataka, where the state is before the Supreme Court, asking the center to release disaster relief funds for mitigating the effects of drought and to, provide relief or disaster relief to drought-affected areas. So funds for disaster relief, they are available to states from two sources. What are those sources? One is the fund which is called the State Disaster Relief Fund. Another fund, it is at the national level, and it is called the National Disaster Relief Fund. Now, these funds, they are created under an act of 2005. This act is the Disaster Management Act of 2005, following the devastating tsunami that we saw in December of 2004. This is the same act that we saw, which was in picture during the COVID-19 pandemic as well. Now, currently, both the states of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, they are seeking additional funds from the National Disaster Relief Funds, and they're arguing that the center's inaction, it violates the provisions of the 2005 Act and the guidelines that were issued under the 2005 Act. So now let's proceed further and try and understand how the funds from the National Fund, they are released and dissipated to the states for the purpose of mitigating their calamity affected factors. So as of Jan of 2022, operational guidelines for constitution and administration of National Disaster Response Funds, called the NDRF guidelines. According to those guidelines, rupees 54,770 crores, it has been embarked for the National Fund from the fiscal years of 2021, 2022 until 2025-2026. So for the national fund, this is the fund that has been allocated and embarked for the national fund for this fiscal term. Now, the NDRF, it covers calamities such as cyclones, droughts, and floods that are considered to be severe in nature by the government of India and which require additional funding beyond what is available with the state governments in their state fund. So a state does not have adequate fund in the state disaster relief fund and has faced a national calamity. So suppose there is a state government, it has its funds, and it does not have adequate funds in the state repository, and now it has faced a national calamity which is beyond the coping capacity of the state government. Then what do such government do? Because of course funds are needed to help those who are in need. So then what can be done is there is a mechanism for that. What is the mechanism intended at? To release funds from the national fund to the state fund. So what is the procedure for going about this release? This is the procedure. The state government concerned can submit a request for funds from the NDRF. Now, depending on the nature of the calamity, either the Ministry of Home Affairs or the Ministry of Agriculture, they will decide if there is a case for additional assistance from the National Disaster Relief Fund. The National Disaster Response Fund guidelines, they provide a step-by-step procedure or process for this assessment. As in, how are these ministries going to assess this need? The step-by-step procedure for that is given in the guidelines. So what is this step-by-step procedure? First of all, the MHA, which is the Ministry of Home Affairs, it will immediately constitute an inter-ministerial center team to visit the areas which are affected by the calamity and determine if there is a need for additional funds. So first is the constitution of this committee, which is going to go on the ground and assess whether there indeed is a need for additional funds or not. Secondly, this committee, it will submit its recommendation to a subcommittee of the National Executive Committee. This comprises the secretaries of relevant center ministries, which will decide how much funding it can be made available. So the IMCT, it is going to go on ground, assess, recommend to the subcommittee. The subcommittee is now going to decide the quantum of the fund which is to be released. Finally, a high-level committee chaired by the Home Minister and comprising the Ministers for Agriculture and Finance, as well as the Niti Aayog Vice Chairman, will sign off on the release of the funds from the National Fund. So Tamil Nadu has asked the Apex Court to direct the center to pay rupees 37,902 crore in aid for the damage which was caused by the 2023 December cyclone Mishon. It is also seeking an additional rupees 2,000 crore as an interim measure for relief operations. The state government claims that despite completing all the necessary steps on its part, and both the IMCT and the subcommittee of the National Executive Committee having submitted their recommendations to the high-level committee, the Ministry of Home Affairs, it is still to convene a meeting and release the funds. So essentially, the Tamil Nadu government is saying that everything that was needed from our part, every sort of recommendation that was needed from the other committees, all of that has been done. Now the matter is stuck because the Ministry of Home Affairs is not convening a meeting for the eventual release of the fund from the National Fund. Claiming unfair treatment in comparison with other states, Tamil Nadu is essentially arguing that the center has violated the citizens' right to equality and right to life with dignity, which are constituted and enshrined under Articles 14 and 21 respectively of the Indian Constitution. Notably, Tamil Nadu's suit, it was filed shortly after Karnataka government filed its own petition on 23rd of March before the Supreme Court, seeking the release of, a budgetary allocation, a sum of, not budgetary allocation, I'm sorry, that would not be the appropriate word, but the Karnataka government sought a release of rupees 18,000 plus crores in funds from the National Fund. The state claims that 196 out of 236 talukas in the state have been classified as severely affected by drought in 2023, with another 27 being classified as moderately drought affected. Karnataka, it too claims that the IMCT, it conducted a comprehensive assessment of the drought situation in the state in October last year, and that the subcommittee of the National Executive Committee, it had also recommended financial assistance to the state, to the MHA last year in November. In addition to the claims that the center's delay of over 6 months in releasing the NDRF funds, it violates the right to life with dignity. As dignity, the state of Karnataka has referred to the Manual for Drought Management, which was updated in 2020, that was released by the Ministry of Agriculture. What does this manual say? That, Karnataka has taken a plea from and to substantiate its argument. So this manual states that the central government, it will take a final decision on the assistance to the state from the NDRF within a month of the receipt of the IMCT report. And clearly there is an inaction on part of the center, and the timeline of 1 month, it has not been followed. So let's see, have other opposition ruled states filed pleas against center in the Supreme Court, be it with respect to this matter or any other matter or on any other ground? So I'm sure all of us, we would be in a position to answer this question. Why? Because we've done a series of articles on how there is a sort of a conflict between the center and a couple of other, governments at the state with respect to lawmaking process. So this is just the latest tussle between the center and the opposition ruled states. To give you an example, the Kerala government approached the Supreme Court very recently, as we've already seen, claiming that the President of India has refused to give assent to 4 bills while disclosing no reasons whatsoever. Now, we've already done a detailed TNA on, what is the governor's role in lawmaking, what is the president's role on lawmaking, what are the arguments of the Kerala government, why has the government approached the Supreme Court, what are the articles concerned here, and an interpretation of Article 200. So this was after Governor of the state, Arif Mohammed Khan, he withheld assent on 7 bills which were passed by the state legislature, some pending as long as for 2 years before referring those bills to the president for assent. And the president eventually refused to give assent to 4 of these bills. Other opposition ruled states, including Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and Punjab, they've also approached the court in the last year, claiming governors have been withholding assent to the bills for an infinite period of time. So the governors were essentially sitting on the bills and they were not referring the bill back for reconsideration of the state legislature, which is, the mandate of the articles concerned of the Indian Constitution. So so in a separate budgetary matter, Kerala has also approached the Supreme Court claiming that the center has slashed the state's borrowing power in the midst of a financial crisis. So that's all we have for this editorial article. And now we proceed to the national news category. So now let's proceed to the national news category. And this is the first update here. World War II veteran, he has passed away. World War II veteran Subedar Thansi, he is a distinguished veteran of the World War II in Indian Army. He dies at the age of 102. He is well known for his valor at the Battle of Kohima during the Second World War and his role in establishing the legacy of the 1st Assam Regiment during their deployment in Jaisalmer. He hails from Mizoram and he's been part of the Army's Assam Regiment. Moving on to the next update. SEBI launches Scores 2.0. Let's understand what is this platform, what is the utility of this platform. SEBI, which is the Securities and Exchange Board of India, it has launched Scores 2.0. This is an upgraded version of its complaint redress system called Scores, The purpose of the system, it is to strengthen mechanisms for redressing investor complaints. SEBI Complaint Redress System, it is an online platform. This was initially launched in June of 2011, and this is the second and upgraded version of this particular system. It allows investors to lodge complaints in the securities market via the web portal or an app. Let's proceed further. Paradip Port, it emerges as India's top cargo handling port in 2023-2024. Paradip Port Authority, Odisha, it has surpassed Deen Dayal Port Authority, also called the Kangla Port, and this is Kandla Port. This is in Kutch district of Gujarat, to become India's leading cargo handling major port in the fiscal year of 2023-2024. Let's talk about Paradip Port first. It was established by the Odisha government in 1962, and it was taken over by the Indian government 3 years later in 1965. Declared a major port by the Indian government on 18th of April 1966, and it became the 8th major port of India. It operates as an autonomous body under the Major Port Trust Act of 1963 under the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, and is administered by the Board of Trustees appointed by the Government of India. So for the purpose of your exam, you just have to make a note of this fact, that which is the leading port currently so far as cargo handling capacity is concerned. And you may also make a note of the fact that Kandla Port is now called the Deen Dayal Port, and the location of the same is in Gujarat. Next up is an update in the category of sports. Hardik Singh and Salima Tate, they were named the Players of the Year for 2023 in the men's and in the women's categories respectively. And this happened at the 6th Annual Hockey Awards, Indian Awards. So during the event, Hockey India also announced the revival of the Hockey India League, which will return next year, in the first month of next year, after a pause since 2017. The revived league, it will feature 8 men's teams and 6 women's teams, with auctions likely to be held after the conclusion of Paris Olympics. Shefali Sharan takes charge as Principal Director General Press Information Bureau. Shefali B. Sharan, she has assumed charge as the Principal DG of Press Information Bureau, and this has happened upon the superannuation and the consequent retirement of Shri Manish Desai. Dr. Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister of India, he has taken retirement from his membership in the upper house of Indian Parliament, which is the Rajya Sabha, marking the end of his 3-decade-long career and term in the upper house. India-Nepal joint initiative to promote Sanskrit research and education. This is also a very interesting update. So Indian and Nepalese government, along with scholars from both the countries, they've collaborated to advance Sanskrit research and education. This partnership, it aims to strengthen bilateral relations and preserve the cultural heritage which is shared by India and Nepal. These are some factual information points with respect to Nepal. You may make a note of it. The capital is Kathmandu. The official language is Nepali. The president is Ramchandra Podel, and the prime minister is Pushpa Kamal Dahal, and the currency is Nepalese rupee. Next up is an update in the category of important days, and this is with respect to World Autism Awareness Day. So the World Autism Awareness Day, it is internationally recognized and commemorated on 2nd of April. Please remember this date, 2nd of April. This is for encouraging member states of the United States to take measures to raise awareness about autistic individuals throughout the world. If we have a look at its historical, progress, so it was designed by the United Nations General Assembly resolution. It was designated, So this day it was designated by virtue of a UNGA resolution, which was passed in the Council in November of 2007 and adopted on 18th of December 2007. The theme for this year is Moving from Surviving to Thriving. Autistic individuals share regional perspectives. Now we proceed in the category of international news. First up is an update from Congo. Congo gets its first woman prime minister. This is very, very important. Please make a note of this. The Democratic Republic of Congo has appointed Judith Suminwa Tuluka as the country's first female prime minister. I would like to repeat the name, Judith Suminwa Tuluka. Please make a note of this name. She has become the first female prime minister of Congo. This move is by President Felix Tshisekedi. This fulfills a campaign promise, and it comes at a very pivotal time when there is violence in the mineral-rich country, which finds Rwanda as its neighbor. So this is some factual information that you may make a note of with respect to Congo. So the neighboring country being Rwanda, it is mineral-rich, and the president is this. Second is this update from the European Union. So Romania and Bulgaria, they partially joined the Schengen travel zone. Romania and Bulgaria, they've taken a significant step in their integration with the European Union by partially joining the Schengen travel zone. See, Schengen travel zone, this is essentially a zone of 28 or 29 European Union countries, wherein they've relaxed their border norms so far as their travel and visa operations are concerned. So while travelers arriving by air or sea, they enjoy ID check-free access. Land borders checks persist due to opposition from Austria. Now, this has brought us to the legal news segment for today. The first update comes from the Honorable Apex Court in the case of Level 9 Biz Private Limited versus Himachal Pradesh Housing and Urban Development Authority and another. So the Supreme Court in this matter has reiterated that in the event of the possibility of two views being possible and being taken, if the trial court acquits the accused, so that before the trial court, there were two views possible, the trial court is opted for this one view, which is the acquittal of the accused person, then it would not be permissible for the High Court to interfere with the trial court's verdict of acquittal or the order of acquittal, unless this view, which is taken by the lower court, the trial court, it was perverse, it is absolutely bizarre, it is absolutely unreasonable. So unless that is there, interference should not be warranted. The court further said that in any case, even if two views are possible, and the trial judge found the other view to be more probable and plausible, then an interference, it would not have been warranted by the High Court, unless the view which is taken by the learned trial judge, it was perverse or impossible view. Next up is another update from the Apex Court. So this is with respect to the changing of panel advocates and how this is causing a problem of adjournments. So Supreme Court has made certain observations on, how there can be a possible solution to it. So the Supreme Court has expressed its confusion regarding how, for the last few months, the panel of advocates in the state and the union territories, it has witnessed change after the shift in political power. So the court therefore observed that this change in the panel of these advocates, it often results in adjournments. So therefore the court added that, and I would like to quote it, "It is true that states and union territories, they have the power to change their impaneled advocates, but while doing so, they must ensure that the court's functioning, it is not adversely affected." The top court has proposed that the states and the UTs, they maintain a previous panel of advocates for at least 6 weeks while changing the panel of these advocates. What is this going to do? This is going to give the courts a time period of 6 weeks so that they can make arrangements accordingly. And the problem of, repeated adjournments, that can be catered to. The name of this matter is Sachin Kumar versus State of Uttarakhand. Please note, the period is of 6 weeks. In case I happen to say 6 months, you may make a correction of it. This is 6 weeks. All right, so the next update, it is from the High Court of Bombay. Waiver of arbitrators' inability, it must be made by agreement in writing. Section 12 subsection 5 does not provide for deemed consent. See, the Bombay High Court essentially has held in this particular matter that the ineligibility of arbitrator, it could not be waived. If it could only be waived if both the parties, they agree, and not just an oral agreement. The agreement must be an express agreement in writing as per section 12 subsection 5 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So there has to be consent by both the parties and all the parties involved in the matter. Parties' consent, it cannot be implied otherwise without having a proper agreement, written agreement in place. So the High Court further held that the arbitrator was, so this is with respect to this matter, that the arbitrator was he was unilaterally appointed, and clause 22 of the arbitration agreement, or the agreement, so the clause of this agreement, which was in between the parties, it stipulated that the sole arbitrator was to be nominated by the respondent. This fact was corroborated by the respondent's letter, where it asserted its intent to appoint the sole arbitrator according to the terms of the clause concerned in the agreement. The argument put forth by the respondent regarding the deemed consent of the petitioners in the appointment of the sole arbitrator, it was rejected by the High Court. Why? Because there has to be consent of all the parties, and consent here cannot be implied. So the High Court further held that section 12 subsection 5 of the Arbitration Act, it clearly outlines that any waiver of the ineligibility of an arbitrator, it must be made by express agreement in writing as specified in the 7th schedule. So the name of this particular matter is Riaik Insurance and Finance Services and Others versus HDFC Bank Limited. So with this, we come to an end of our TNA. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a wonderful day ahead.